The Walt Disney Company and Walt Disney CEO Bob Chapek reported the third fiscal quarter earnings for the company on Wednesday, August 10th, and we covered it here live on Valiant Renegade with my guest, WDW Pro from thatparkplace.com. You can go back and check that video out either on Valiant Renegade or on our live stream archive channel, Renegade Online. You'll find it on one of the two at least, depending on when you watch this video. During that call, we learned quite a bit. And of course, people were focused in on what were the parks revenues and what were Disney Plus's new numbers. And of course, the Disney Plus advertising base tier, what is the launch date? As we predicted, it came true. And we found out what that launch date was during that call just a couple of days ago. Stick around. Let's get into it. Online. Well, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video not yet subscribed to this channel, please make sure you hit that like button on this video, hit that subscribe button, turn it from red to gray, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, do leave a comment before you head out today. Leave those comments below. YouTube loves likes and comments and shares and all that good stuff. So thank you all so much for helping this channel to grow. Just recently passed 12,000 subs and hope to keep going from here. So let's talk about Disney and this earnings call. Let's talk specifically about Disney Plus because that's where the attention was really focused. We knew months ago that Bob Chapek and Disney were going to announce an advertising-based tier, and then they did. And then we started trying to come up with when would they actually announce the launch date of this ad-based tier. And about a month ago, I said it would probably come during the third fiscal quarter earnings call. And sure enough, we got it. Now, one thing where I missed, where I thought they might be backing it up towards October, which is about when Disney's fiscal year begins on October 1st each and every year, they actually are going to launch it December 8th, a little bit later than I anticipated. So that probably suggests that some big show, maybe something like The Mandalorian, might also launch in tandem with that ad-based tier. They'd want to give that a good kickstart. Now, one of the things that I had also predicted some time ago was that the ad-based tier would come in around $5 or $6 and that the premium tier would move from its current $8 mark up to $10 as Disney wants to continue to increase that average revenue per user. Right now, for example, Disney's ARPU stands at about $6.50, at least for the non-Disney Hotstar or non-India markets, whereas Netflix sits around at a cool $16 almost per month in average revenue per user. Disney knows they need to increase that value proposition of Disney Plus, not only to subscribers, but more importantly to shareholders of the Walt Disney Company. They need to get Disney into profit territory, or Disney Plus rather, into profit territory, and they're still a long ways off. If you recall, we discussed where in the second fiscal quarter, Disney had a loss on Disney Plus of around $900 million. Now, this quarter, that bumped up to $1.1 billion. So in other words, from January 1st until June 30th of 2022, Disney Plus lost roughly $2 billion for the Disney Company. And the only reason they're able to sustain that at this point as they get it into profit territory, hopefully in the next 2 years, as their projections still are holding to. They have things like linear delivery content, ESPN, ABC, live sports is the revenue driver when it comes to television at Disney, bar none, taking in almost $2 to $2.5 billion a quarter in operating profits. So that's making up for some of those losses at Disney Plus until they can get over the hump. But the pricing that we actually got on the new Disney Plus tiers is $11 a month for premium and the same $8 a month for the ad-based tier that you are now paying for premium. Now, this took a few people by surprise, and including myself. That was a little bit higher price than I had anticipated. But some of the reasoning apparently came down to the point to where Chapek discussed that the ads on the ad-based tier would be more limited in scope. Maybe not having 8 to 10 minutes of ads per half-hour show, but maybe 4 to 5 minutes. So I can kind of understand why they wanted to keep the pricing tier a little bit higher than the $5 or $6 that I was anticipating. But to that end, Bob Chapek recently had an interview with CNBC that I found rather interesting. And I want to take a look at a few clips from that right now.
Well, we had a great quarter overall. I mean, not only in streaming, but in our parks business as well. As you've seen, We had tremendous resilience amongst all the fears of inflation and recession. Our parks business was extremely strong, with a 40% increase in yield. So people are coming in, they're spending more, and they're very happy guests. But you're right, our streaming business has been really phenomenal.
One of the things that I noticed about this Bob Chapek versus the Chapek of 3 months ago during the last post-quarterly earnings interviews was how much more comfortable he was. He's even got a new look with a beard now. But there was no question that he seems a lot happier and a lot more confident and has a lot more swagger in his tone during this interview than I've seen him in the past. Now, of course, the last interview he had back in May was right after they had all of that political mess at Disney, where a handful of Disney employees decided to drag the company down the political rabbit hole over Florida House Bill 1557. And then, of course, we had all the videos leak from Reimagine Tomorrow, including the quote-unquote hostage video that Bob Chapek was forced to make during that. Now, that was a man at that point that was probably beaten down. But since then, he has been renewed as Disney CEO for another 3 years, a huge breath of life. And his main rival at Disney, who arguably orchestrated much of that political strife that happened in April and May, and who was also gunning for his job, was publicly humiliated and fired from Disney by Chapek and the board itself. And of course, that was Peter Rice. We covered that here on Valiant Renegade as well. So Chapek definitely seems to be clearing the decks, because out of that Disney walkout group, to remind everybody, we haven't heard a peep out of them since April, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Now, besides talking about the parks and experiences and how the per capita revenue of their visitors in the parks are up 40% over 2019, which is a stunning number, showing that international visitors are definitely coming back to Disney parks in droves because they spend more money than anybody when they hit those places. Of course, the questions finally did turn to Disney Plus, and this is one of the things that we noticed during the live stream on Wednesday with the earnings call, and that was that though Disney Plus grew by about 15 million net new subscribers over the globe, only about 100,000 of those came from the U.S. And of course, CNBC picked up on this as well the next morning, and this is what we got.
Yeah, and you did add many more subscribers than expected in the quarter. But when it came to Disney Plus, subscriber growth for those domestic subscribers, which are in many ways the most valuable, certainly far more valuable than those Hotstar subscribers, that growth is slowing. Are you concerned in light of the contraction we've seen at Netflix and the fact that there is so much macroeconomic uncertainty plus inflation that subscribers in your highest value markets will not want to pay more if they don't want to watch ads?
So as we said yesterday in the call, we suspect that we believe that we're going to see growth accelerate for domestic subs for Disney Plus in the next quarter. So we believe that whether it's international growth, domestic growth, with ads, without ads, across the board, we're going to see growth. So we're pretty bullish.
Now, CNBC seemed like a lot like I did, where I wasn't quite satisfied with that answer. So they pressed a little bit more.
But are you concerned that the growth is not coming from the most valuable subs? I know you're very much focused on profitability, and it seems like in the streaming landscape, this is a relatively new thing to focus on the profitability over the growth. And I'm wondering, though, if you're concerned about where the growth is coming from now.
Well, all of our core subs, as we now define them as of yesterday, to try to distinguish them from the lower value Hotstar subs, all of those subs are at a relatively similar value. And so whether it's domestic or international, we see growth across both. Mm-hmm. But whether it's domestic or international is almost, from an overall standpoint, sort of indifferent. But we do see growth in domestic.
Still not quite a definitive answer on where the subscriber growth went in the U.S. Because if we were to stop for a second and presume that Disney Plus may be saturated in the U.S. market at 44.5, 45 million subscribers, then you have to wonder, how is Netflix sitting pretty up at 70 to 75 million North American subscribers? Seems like Disney has a lot more room to grow, and they should be clipping along at a greater pace than 100,000 new subs per quarter, which is the lowest that they've had on record since they've been breaking out the domestic subs and the growth during the quarterly earnings reports. Now, there's only one thing that I can think of that had a dramatic impact, or at least that we can presume had a dramatic impact, and it was what I just mentioned a few moments ago. During March and April, Disney was dragged into political warfare in the public eye, and very public it was, with Pixar even coming out chastising Disney executives like Kareem Daniel and Bob Chapek and Alan Bergman for cutting out what they called quote-unquote overtly gay affection from their Pixar movies. And this is why Lightyear hit the theaters unedited. Now, it didn't get into some international markets, but then again, nobody really watched it here in the States either. People stayed home. They didn't care. Either it was a movie they didn't want to see, or it was a movie they deliberately avoided. Now, why is that important? Well, because maybe Disney Plus did pick up about 1 million or 2 million new subscribers in the quarter. But at the same time, maybe they lost 900,000 or 1.9 million unsubbed from Disney Plus after that political fiasco that they put themselves through. That's very possible as well. All we know is the net new additions, and that is the 100,000. We don't know how many actually subscribed and how many unsubscribed. And that churn probably was largely due in that quarter to what Disney did to itself. But that all seems to be behind it at this point. And this new advertising-based tier is hopefully going to take Disney Plus into profitability over the next 2 years to meet Disney's goals. Because again, they're sitting at $6.50 a month in ARPU, with Netflix sitting at $16, and Netflix is set to launch their own advertising-based tier very soon as well. So what we need to see from Disney Plus going forward is more of that value proposition, getting itself into profitability, where they're suggesting right now that Disney Plus is basically reaching its peak losses, at least according to what was discussed on the earnings call, which I can understand. If the pricing is about to increase 40% on the premium tier and they're about to start having advertising come in, then those operating losses of around $1 billion a quarter that we've been seeing the last 2 quarters are going to start shrinking as higher positive revenues come in, and eventually they inch their way to profitability over the next 2 years. Now, one thing I want to remind everybody about this earnings call, as many people asked, is where was the mention of Marvel and Pixar and Star Wars, Lucasfilm in this? They really don't get into those things in the earnings calls too much. And if you listen to the questions that come in during the earnings calls, the analysts don't seem to care too much about those either. Because at the end of the day, even with a movie like Avengers Endgame that would have returned somewhere around $1.4 billion back to Disney, $1.4 billion of the box office would have been shared back from theaters to Disney from that film around the globe. That still doesn't even amount to a single quarter of what ESPN and ABC Sports will pull in from advertising. So they're looking at big ticket items, the parks and linear television and live sports. That is where the big money is made for Disney, and that's not going to change anytime soon. Now, hopefully we're going to learn more about those 3 particular studios when it comes to D23, which comes up here in a few weeks around September 10th. And I think that's where we'll start seeing more news out of Marvel and Lucasfilm and Pixar. So stay tuned for that. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please make sure you like and subscribe, hit that notification bell, and make sure you do leave a comment before you head out the door today. Until next time, take care.